At my fiancé's medical school graduation party in Los Angeles, the one I paid for entirely with my life savings of $275,000 and $8,000 every semester to support her education, she turned to the security guard and, loud enough for me to hear, said, "I don't know him. Please escort him out of my private event." Her mother burst out laughing, adding cruelly, "Guess the wedding's cancelled, huh?" I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I smiled, turned around, and walked away. But as I left, I began forming a plan. She was going to regret everything. I remember the beginning clearly. We were both 19. She was juggling pre-med courses and 2 waitressing jobs, while I worked long shifts at my dad's auto shop. One afternoon, she looked me in the eye and said, "I'm going to be a doctor." And I'll never forget who helped me get there. I believed her. For nearly a decade, I did everything I could to help her realize that dream. Every dollar I made went toward her education, tuition, books, rent, exam fees, supplies. Nothing was too much. I never took a vacation, never upgraded my truck, never spent money on anything unnecessary. I even took night shifts driving for a rideshare company to help her afford MCAT prep. She constantly promised she'd repay me, not just financially, but with love, loyalty, and a future together. "When I'm Dr. Alyssa Grant, you'll be right beside me," she always said. That promise stayed with me. But on the day of her graduation, she barely acknowledged me. I brushed it off as nerves or stress. That night, though, at the lavish rooftop party I fully funded, I got the truth. Dressed neatly, holding a bracelet I'd custom-made for her, with our initials and the graduation date engraved, I approached the event entrance. Security stopped me. And then, her voice rang out behind them, clear and unapologetic. "I don't know him. Please remove him." I didn't move, didn't speak. I just stood there, realizing in a single instant that this wasn't some last-minute change of heart. This had been planned. Or, at the very least, inevitable. I'd been a stepping stone, useful, convenient, disposable. So I did what no one expected. I left quietly. But I wasn't defeated. I had something better than a scene. I had documentation. Back at my apartment that night, I opened a folder labeled receipts. Inside was everything: bank transfers, tuition payments, Amazon textbook orders, rent payments sent directly to her landlord, and checks marked clearly with phrases like "full semester tuition, Alyssa Grant." And many of these payments had her signature, even if carelessly scribbled. She thought it was all a gift. She was wrong. Nothing had ever been presented that way. These were loans, legally and factually. I contacted an old friend from college, now a civil attorney at a big firm. Years ago, I'd rebuilt his car for free after a crash. He owed me one. When I laid out the situation, he replied instantly, "We can sue. Breach of contract. Fraud. Emotional damages, if you're up for it." If she tried to play the victim, would bury her in proof. But I wasn't done. The wedding venue was still booked, in my name. Months before, I'd secured it for our big day. I'd already cancelled the florist and photographer when things started going cold between us, but I held off cancelling the venue. Instead, I made a small change. I contacted the manager and converted the event from a wedding reception to a formal dinner, the Eric Foundation annual banquet. Same date. Same catering. One major addition, a projector and printed handouts. When the night came, the hotel was beautifully arranged. Guests, most of whom knew both of us or had invested in my work over the years, arrived dressed for a celebration but unsure of what it was. Their invitations read, *The Eric Foundation presents Trust, Betrayal, and $275,000, a real-life case study. On the ballroom screen, the title slide waited in silence. At 7 p.m. sharp, I stepped onto the stage. I wore the suit I'd originally planned for my wedding day. I thanked everyone for coming. Then I said, "Tonight, you'll hear a true story. A 7-year relationship. A future built together. And how it was torn apart by betrayal." The room quieted completely. I clicked the remote. The first slide showed pictures of us over the years, vacations, study sessions, birthdays. Then came slides of payment logs, screenshots of bank transfers, and signed acknowledgements of money received. Next, a message between her and her best friend. Asterisk, I'm only staying with him until med school's over. Then I'm done. He's sweet, but too safe. Not my type. Asterisk, a collective gasp swept the room. Then came the recording, captured from a tiny camera in my jacket, of the graduation party. Her voice, cold and clear. I don't know him. The final slide was an audio message I'd recorded the next morning. Asterisk, congratulations, Doctor. You're no longer my fiancé, but you are now the subject of a civil lawsuit and a professional ethics complaint. I hope your new boyfriend is good at damage control. Asterisk. I ended with a simple message. Thank you all for being here. Let this be a lesson. Choose partners who value your heart, not your bank account. The room was stunned. And then, applause. My phone lit up the moment I stepped off stage. Alyssa was panicking. What did you do? You ruined my life. You're insane. I silenced my phone and toasted the night with a glass of champagne. The fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, she lost her residency offer at Cedars-Sinai. I hadn't stopped at public exposure. I'd submitted every relevant detail, signed record, and message to the ethics committee, citing her as an example of unprofessional conduct and financial deception. Her dream of becoming a doctor wasn't over, but it had taken a hit she'd never expected. And for once, I wasn't the one left picking up the pieces. I submitted a comprehensive report, complete with timestamps, message threads, audio recordings, and detailed bank transaction histories. I sent it to the California Medical Board, the hospital's ethics committee, and most importantly, the director of the residency program. I wasn't acting out of spite. I laid out the facts, showing that she had misused funds under false claims, committed academic dishonesty by submitting essays written by someone else, and violated the ethical standards expected of a medical trainee. I even had the Google Docs activity logs to back up my claims. Less than 2 days later, I received a short reply. Asterisk, thank you for your submission. The matter has been escalated. You may be contacted as a material witness during our ethics review. Asterisk, I never heard from them again, because by then, her professional image was already disintegrating. Her LinkedIn vanished. She scrubbed her Instagram, deleted every photo of herself in a lab coat, and disabled comments. Even the orthopedic resident she'd secretly been seeing walked away once he realized what he was entangled in. As for me, remember the $275,000? I had documentation for every dollar. I'd already filed a civil suit for fraudulent use of funds, armed with contracts, wire transfers, and evidence that we were never legally married. That last part mattered. It meant she had no rightful claim to any of the money, except what could be proven as a gift. Spoiler alert, almost none of it qualified. I froze all joint accounts, contacted my bank's fraud division, and had my legal team issue a cease and desist letter to her mother, who had once bragged that the fool paid for everything. A week later, her lawyer called me. Mr. Reynolds, what would it take to settle this quietly? I laughed. Tell Alyssa to ask me herself. I'd love to hear the apology in person. He hesitated. That's not likely. I answered. Then neither is a settlement. Click. And then came the banquet, the one where she had ridiculed me, calling me small time. A video clip of my final speech was uploaded anonymously to YouTube under the title, he funded her med school. She dumped him. So, he did this. It exploded. Over 4 million views in 2 days. Sponsors reached out. A podcast invited me to speak. And my modest consulting firm? Booked solid for half a year. The courtroom wasn't filled with press, but it was filled with quiet spectators who had come to witness 2 lives in sharp contrast. Mine, shaped by discipline and humility. Hers, crumbling under the weight of entitlement and deceit. She entered in a dull gray outfit, flanked by legal counsel, trying to appear sympathetic. But beneath the careful makeup, the worry showed. She looked around for support. None was given. I sat beside my attorney, composed and silent. I didn't even glance her way. I didn't have to. The documents in my lawyer's briefcase spoke volumes. Bank records, text conversations, Emails where she bragged about how easy it was to manipulate someone who loved her, even footage from the banquet. And crucially, receipts confirming I paid her tuition, with a clause stating it was conditional on marriage. There was no marriage. There never would be. My lawyer stood and addressed the court with quiet authority. Your Honor, this case is not about generosity between lovers. It is about a pattern of deception, emotional exploitation, and financial abuse disguised as affection. Her lawyer tried to claim the money had been gifted. Mine calmly presented a message dated June 4th. As long as he thinks we're still together, I don't have to worry about rent or tuition. The judge arched an eyebrow. Alyssa covered her face in shame. The verdict was swift and crushing. She was ordered to repay the full $275,000 plus $50,000 in damages for emotional distress and defamation. If necessary, her wages would be garnished for 10 years. And her academic fraud? Permanently attached to her professional record. When the judge brought down the gavel, the smugness she'd worn like armor disappeared. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat there, empty. Her mother whispered something as she left the courtroom alone, not even glancing back. I walked out into the daylight, not as the man who had been used and humiliated, but as someone who had rebuilt his life with integrity. I checked my phone. A message waited. A publisher asking if I'd consider writing a book. I smiled. Because sometimes revenge isn't about rage, it's about resolution. And success, when seen by the person who tried to break you, is the sharpest justice of all. 3 years later, I stood on stage in New York City, adjusting the microphone. My memoir, Burned, Then Built, had just landed on the bestseller list. It wasn't just about what happened. It was about healing, self-respect, and refusing to be defined by betrayal. It was about justice, not spite, and moving forward with strength and clarity. In the front row sat my fiancé, a brilliant and steady surgeon, someone who loved me without conditions or manipulation. After the event, while we greeted readers, I heard a voice behind me. Mark. I turned. It was Alyssa. She looked nothing like the woman I once knew. Her expression was hesitant, unsure. I read your book, she said quietly. You really turned it all around. I nodded. Yes, I did. She paused. Would you ever want to get coffee sometime? Just talk. I looked at my fiancé, who gently squeezed my hand. Then I turned back and offered the answer I had been saving all those years. No, thank you. And we walked away, leaving her behind, lost in the echo of what she threw away. Because sometimes, closure isn't about the perfect final words. It's about realizing you no longer need to say anything at all.